EPSI presents Knowledge Series.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Welcome to this EPSI knowledge series on different aspects of education in the country. I am Mahesh Sharma, and I represent EPSI. And welcome to this today's episode with Dr. J.K. Prabhu, the Vice Chancellor of Manipal University, Jaipur, one of the flagship campuses of the Manipal Group when it started expanding within India. And Dr. Prabhu has taken over at a very crucial time for that campus. And Dr. Prabhu has put in a long and illustrious innings with the Manipal Group for about 2 decades and a half, if I'm right, in different capacities, both as an academician as well as an administrator par excellence. And now he is the Vice Chancellor of Manipal Jaipur. Welcome to the episode, Dr. Prabhu.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mahesh ji. Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you with us. And the first issue with which I want to pick your brain is on the NEP. Now, how do you think this new education policy is going to impact both universities in general and deemed universities in particular, because that's a domain you understand quite well? So,
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much. And this is the very important topic over which EPSI is creating these kind of interactions with many of us. I'm very happy to participate in this. And the first thing is we are very happy and welcome this new National Education Policy 2020. And once the policy was ready, we have deliberated internally in each university and in the Manipal, again with the group, like all the Vice Chancellor, Registrar, academicians, they all came together and we deliberated on that. The good part of this NEP, if you really look into that, so curriculum revision is taking a major shape. So, and when you look into that, there are many aspects. One is the competent curriculum, what we want. The second one is the relevant curriculum. And the third part is the flexible curriculum. And the another very important is on we also require the fun part while students are involved in the education. Today, that the last part is missing, Mahesh. I am very sorry to say the students are not enjoying the curriculum because there is a less on the experiential part of it. And definitely, if you increase or improve or give the emphasis for the experiential learning, and then I'm sure that the student will enjoy and student will relate, and then it becomes what do you say, most memorable learning for them. But for the questions that which you have asked is how it will be impacting the universities and the deemed university. So far, many of the universities are keep complaining that we don't have that kind of a flexibility to change the curriculum, and we tend to give the blame on the regulatory body or on the government. But now this ball is in our court, and that flexibility is given to every university. Of course, we need to follow the processes, whether it is a board of studies, whether it is an academic council or a senate, we need to follow that. But definitely, if any university, whether it is a state university or a deemed university, if they are very progressive and if they really wanted to make that change, and this is the one time that we need to do it. And if we don't do it now, we will never able to make that kind of an impact. So it is an opportunity for all the educational institutions to adopt these kind of a flexible, competent and relevant curriculum make it is a more experiential, and compete with the world. Because if you see the academic front, the competition is always, we keep telling, for the Western universities and all. But this is one opportunity for all of us to change the curriculum in such a way that we become a very competitive in the global scenario. And I'm sure that there are many of the universities are thinking loud in making this happen. And I'm very happy the Manipal group in general, and as well as the MAHE as a deemed university, as well as our group university like Sikkim Manipal University, Jaipur, everybody is making that an effort to make this impact in the education.
That's interesting. You raised a very crucial point on experiential education. Now, that reminds me of the experiments which BITS Pilani did in terms of practice school 1 and 2 during their program, or what TIS is doing with respect to having half-day classes and half-day work during their MA program. Now, these are two distinct models. Now, both will then presuppose some amount of access to sites where you can make the student experience learning. Now, that is both a constraint and opportunity, isn't it? So
yes.
So my question is, A, there is a geographical constraint. B, there is a model variant as well. So I would be quite keen to know what do you think?
Okay, see, when any university would like to make any change in the design and development of the curriculum, or is an impactful in the delivery part of it, we may have to look into what the other universities are doing it. And we must be open enough to take the best practices from the other universities. So every resources, and then we have to see that whether we have the resources to make it happen. For example, the best ever model where BITS Pilani is doing on the practice school for a very long time. Many universities have adopted this model with the limited resources what they have it. See, for example, main Manipal in Karnataka and even in Jaipur, Manipal University has adopted this practice school concept for an engineering program. But now the question is, it's a delivery point of view, whether we have the bandwidth of appointing our own student or creating that an opportunity for the student who is willing to go to the industry and do their projects. Okay, or whether are leaving that to the students themselves. So this is the one big change which happens. So Pilani campus has done very beautifully because they have not only adopted this, but they have created a large opportunity for the students to have this kind of experience in the area what they want.
Also, partially, they are a very boutique university, small numbers.
Yeah. So that is the good part of it. So now, when we take, we appreciate that. This is the concept is very nice. It gives an experiential learning. Students are testing their the fundamental learning, whatever they have done in the industry scenario. And the students are being tested in the live environment there. They are doing the live projects. And it improves their employability in the same industry or otherwise.
Correct.
So this is the beautiful model ever, and Manipal has adopted it. Initially, of course, we are very frank that we haven't, had this an opportunity for all the students to create this, these chances for them. So few of our students, I must really feel happy and proud of my alumni, recently passed alumni. They made their own effort in getting into one of their choices in the industry. But what we have developed, we have given those recommendations, but we did not stop there. When our students made their own arrangement to go to that industry, but as a faculty, we took that as an excuse to go to that industry and build the bridge between that industry, because that particular student may go out after having those experience, but building that kind of a link, it would help strengthen the industry connect to the university.
True.
And create more opportunity for the next batch of students. But today, if you see, whatever the brand which we have developed, it is a majority by our students themselves. And we took it to the next level and creating an opportunity for a larger group of students in the campus. And this is the model which BITS done long back, Manipal experienced, and slowly we are now maturing enough to make this happen for a larger crowd. And I'm very, very open. And now that confidence makes us to have a more and more, the practice school opportunity for our student. And many of the universities, when we say it's an industry connect for them is only the placements.
Yep. Yeah.
Of course, which is a very, very important. Of course, we must develop that. But it must not stop there. So industry connect for us, Maheshji, is now today, the industry people are there in my board of studies. So that means being there in the board of studies, they will help me in designing the relevant curriculum. They will also create an opportunity for a larger group of practice school opportunities for my student. Number 2. Number 3, we also see that there are some industry personnel, they have an aptitude towards engaging the students in an academic forum. So we will appoint them as an adjunct faculty. And we have also created why only the practice school for students, why it can't be for faculty. So we have created this as another thing which is called as a sabbatical. Usually the sabbatical in the major universities are for the higher learning in the other universities where there is a postdoctoral. But we have extended it for the industry experience for my faculty. And when they come back, the culture in the academic institution will be much better, and they will give the live projects, and they becomes the ambassador for sending more and more students and place them in the industry. And for more than that, they will bring the industry culture in an academic environment.
What percentage of your faculty would probably avail this opportunity, Professor?
Okay, see, we have in Jaipur, we have started about 3 years back, and we have requested the industries to give this opportunity, because unlike the student, there cannot be more faculties opportunity which they can keep it. Each industry can give at least 2 positions in a year.
Yes.
So in that aspect, I would say roughly about 10% of my faculty have gone so far. But we need at least more than 50% in the next 2 years to have this experience.
True.
Yeah, so this is it. But today's scenario is only a 10%, especially in Manipal University, Jaipur. Okay,
fascinating. On that note, I want to take you to the second big aspect of NEP, which is internationalization. The document speaks in many places about that, both bringing students in as well as Indian universities going abroad. Now, Manipal Group probably is a pioneer in this, especially on the medical education. You've gone as far as the Caribbean. And as a core member of that management team, what are the learnings? What would you tell an aspiring Indian university to watch out for?
Okay. Thank you very much, Maheshji. This is internationalization is at the top of the agenda for a Manipal group of institutions. As you mentioned, Main Manipal in Karnataka has done it very beautifully for various programs. It is started with the medical, and then now going very big in the engineering program, and very big in the engineering program. And now we are also expanding that for the various other streams of an academics. And we have also brought this learning from Manipal campus, even in Jaipur campus also. Okay, see, there are multiple things which we have done. And in my opinion, I think we need to create this different opportunities, and it is given a choice for the students to explore it. Number one, the good part of the Manipal group of institution, the students are very well aware about the universities and internationalization. Second part, parents are very, very supportive. Truly speaking, if you ask them, parents as well as students, they want to have the international experience for a full degree program. They wanted to send there. But there are 2 points which holds them back. One is the students are very young. Some of the parents, they feel that at this level, sending my child all the way to the another country, whether it would be a right time or a phase to send them. If due to any reason, if it does not click, what would be the chance? That is the number one ambiguity many parents and students have it. The second part is the financials, because if you directly send the child for an international or overseas university for a full degree program, then definitely the cost will be much higher. Okay, so now as a Manipal, what we have done is they want the international experience. So what we have done, we have tied up with a large group of universities, whether it is US based, Canada, or is in Europe based, or Australia, or many. So throughout the globe, and we pick up those universities, we have some kind of an understanding and make that kind of an MOU. What this MOU speaks, it would be very general in one aspect, and then there is a very specific in the other aspect. General aspect for all MOU is the student mobility and the faculty mobility. Irrespective of how the MOU is generated and where it takes, in that we will make these 2 points as very, very clear. Student mobility, when we say, any student would like to experience 1 semester in that university, what we will do in our curriculum, whatever he or she learns there, the credit will be taken back and adopt that credits in our curriculum. So the student,
So the degree would then be awarded by the home university.
Degree will be awarded by the home university.
Oh.
Okay. Student will get only the experience, but he will not lose the time.
Correct. Yes.
So that is the advantage of it. Okay.
And the cost will also be advantageous.
Correct. So the another part is when the student has shown that kind of an experience there, he will get the confidence. He will not come back only with the credit. He will make his next move ready there. So that means he will talk to the professor there. He will look into the other aspect, and he will decide whether this university will be good for him or her for the post-graduation. So he will make that decision and he will come back.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So in that you just see he will not lose the time, the cost will be reduced, and he will also make the decision. Even if it is no, it is fine. But he made the experience in that.
That
So
adds
that is
value to him. That is true.
yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
that really adds a value in it.
Correct.
But
correct.
Mahesh ji, in that we have went to one more level higher. Let us see that if he spends, instead of a one semester, if he extend for a year, let us say. So he is spending 1 year there, and there are some university, whatever he does that 1 year credit, they will also use that for his post graduation.
All right.
So that he will get the credit back, and the parent organization here will give the degree. But the same credit will be used there, and his total duration of the post graduation may reduce. So this dual advantage he will also get it.
So it
So this
almost
is
becomes a training program or a joint degree.
yeah.
All
So
right.
it would be a dual degree sometime.
Yep.
Okay, dual means two different degrees.
Correct. Correct.
Joint
correct.
degree is always a challenge. This is our experience and learning we would like to share with you, because the nomenclature of the degree sometimes it creates a problem. See, for example,
Yes.
ours,
Yeah.
let us say if it is an MTech, but they will say MSc engineering.
MSc. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is why coming out with the a same nomenclature for a joint degree always creates some kind of a confusion.
All right. All right.
And the market is also not ready yet to accept this joint degree. They will get confused. Okay, so in that aspect, till the market get ready, till this NEP get matured, so we
Right.
would like to keep this as a two separate degrees.
Degree.
And if he wants to get a job here, he
Yep.
will show the Indian degree, which will be more valid. If he wants to get the job there, he will show the overseas university's degree, which is a very well accepted in the overseas, and he will get it. So,
That
but what you said, Mahesh ji, that is the right thing to do it. Because in this particular case, the same duration, both the universities are giving the credits, which is logically may not be the right thing to do it. I'm very, very frank in it. Many regulatory bodies are also raising this objection.
Correct.
How a student will study and both the university give the same credits.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
best thing to do is the joint. But the joint, we have this kind of a nomenclature conflict.
Issue. Yes.
Yeah.
So possibly
then-
that is. So maybe that is the next step for us in terms of having an uniform nomenclature, which is globally acceptable.
Globally accepted, correct.
Acceptable.
And that is the right thing to do. And because logically, to some extent, we may justify what we did it right. But on the regulatory aspect and compliance aspect, if you see that, joint degree is the right thing to do, in my opinion, because both the universities will come together, deliberate, and they have the commitment also. It shows that everything is being done, because finally the degree is given, no? So both the things, and jointly if it gives, that has a better value. But unfortunately, that requires some more time and some more deliberation. Maybe, as you said, in the internationalization, nomenclature must be same. The corporate must be ready to accept this nomenclature. So many things has to parallelly happen, but I'm very hopeful this would happen under the banner of an NEP.
All right. Thank you. That takes us to the third axis in NEP, which is research.
Yeah.
And thankfully, you've gone through the rigmarole. You started off as Dean Research in Manipal, moved on to become the registrar, then has taken on the mantle of a VC. So you've actually seen that growth both from hands-on as well as bird's eye view. Having seen that, it'll be interesting to know, how do you see faculty's response towards research changing? Because we are not a very research-intensive university system. Only in the last decade or so, we've started looking at research critically. Until then, research was focused on the CSIRs and the labs, and universities primarily were teaching institutions. Universities becoming centers of research excellence is a recent phenomenon, maybe a decade or two. And you've been part of that trajectory. How do you see it, sir? How has been the change?
Yeah, so this is a very big move, especially for the private universities.
Hmm.
And as you rightly pointed out, the major chunk of the university's revenue, private universities' revenue, it comes from an undergraduate program. Okay. Okay. So, and lot of our 80% of our the time it goes into the engagement of undergraduate students. Okay. So now slowly we will also ask our faculty that you must also do the research. Okay. Now the question is, it is a very tight rope walk for any private universities that how to manage this research along with the teaching. NAP also now started thinking about that it is an option for the university also, whether as a university, whether I would be recognized as a teaching university moving forward, or whether I need to change my track and concentrate on my research universities. So it is a call for the universities, but being as in the Manipal and having our experience, that we are also now moving towards the research universities. Okay, now the question is, private university will not get any kind of a fund from the government to do the research. Of course, when I speak about that, it is not that the project, but we have a flexibility now. I'm very happy the government and the funding agencies are now also opening all these kind of projects are also for the private universities. Initially, for a few years back, and many of us private universities, when they go, it was not evaluated on the competence mode. Rather, okay, you are a government university, government funded research will come to you, because they were thinking that it is a government money, the government money must go to the government institution. Why they have to give it to the private? But the situation has changed now, because when you go for a project application, it is on deliverables. And any universities, whether it is a deemed or a private, depending upon their track record and depending upon their potential, the government gives that kind of a fund for the research. I'm very happy that that move has already happened now. So now the question is now, even to establish a research, one thing is the competence level of my faculty need to be there. I need to give enough time for them, also do the research, okay, and create that kind of a high-end laboratories for them. And if that laboratories or that facilities are not being created, so how they will go and confidently apply for the project from outside? It is not a possibility. Now the question is, how do I encourage them to do the project or research? Okay, forget about the funded project. Even if there is a publication which may not require any kind of an external fund, they have done some research, whether it is a PhD or a student project. So they have to spend an additional time on writing a paper and submitting to a good journal. So what we have done to start with, we have created some kind of an incentive. Okay, and incentive is also depending upon the quality of the publications.
All right.
There is a again a lot of pros and cons. People would say that the research will be purely a passion, and while giving these kind of an incentive, whether you are forcing them indirectly do the research, whether only for the sake of incentive these faculty are doing research, or is there any some kind of a competition which happens which creates a plagiarism related such kind of the things which happens. So all these are discussion, but in my opinion and my experience both in main Manipal and here, I think if someone has done something good work, giving incentive, it's not the bad idea. And before starting this scheme itself, if we think that everybody is doing a malpractice, that is not the right thing to do.
True.
Of course, if somebody has done it, catch hold of them and advise them, counsel them.
Yep.
But what we have done is created an incentive scheme for the faculty to do the research, not only for the faculty, and which we have extended it even for the students. So that is the way that we need to build the research culture among student and faculty. We are on the move. We are not at all reached there, but we have a plan to be there as seen as a research universities under NEP 2020.
Fascinating. And I'd also think, it'd be worthwhile to look at other private university experiences, especially institutions like VIT, who have more or less managed to crack this game a bit. VIT, in fact, has now reached a stage where they probably have, in terms of numbers, they're probably the largest academic publishers in India, overtaking even IITs. But in terms of their quality, there's a long way to go. While as Manipal's publications, when I have researched on it, is probably on the higher side when it comes to citations and impact. So qualitatively, you're far better. So that's also a game between maintaining quality and maintaining quantity. So that also remains a concern for you, isn't it? Because
Yes.
NEP works by numbers.
Correct. See now, yes, what you said is right, Maheshji. As a private universities, because all of them, they have the common problems. Okay, so under that circumstances, that we are also now talking to VIT people, and we are very happy, and we must also compliment them, because within the shortest period that they have also raised in the research by engaging faculty and students. So the total one is the observation that we have, and also an experience being within the group. So our motive is both quality and quantity may go together. This is what we strongly believe. Okay, we need to make it is very cautious. Okay, so but this is the myth. Many times people would say if the quantity increases, quality comes down. Yes, if it is not properly taken care, it would happen. But if you put a lot of checks and balances and engage faculty and student very productively, and it is possible that even both the quality and quantity may go together. Even if there is a dip, it may happen for some time, but it is possible to correct it and move forward. So today, when the numbers are not there, at least let us build the number first.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
and then parallelly have some kind of a scheme to build the quality too. So this is my experience, and we can definitely do that. And the advantage, Maheshji, is a large number of good students that we get it.
Correct. Always.
People would also say that whether it is a right thing to do the research at the undergraduate level, or whether it is the research is only meant for the post-graduation or for a PhD. If you ask me, the undergraduate students are very smart. Only one thing is, we must not impose or make it mandatory.
Correct.
But if there is an undergraduate student, if they are very good and if our ideas are very good, why not? give them some kind of a research track for them. And if somebody is interested to come for the research and doing something good, why not encourage and incentivize even them? They will find the advantage. Whether, see, today I'm very happy, even the industry or the opportunity for the higher education will also improve if they have 1 or 2 publications on their name. So students understood that. And I'm very happy that even both VIT as well as Manipal, they are making this a very conscious, step in introducing this kind of a concept of research in the undergraduate program, where there is a large number. Even if there is a 20% because of a large denominator, the number may immediately shoot up. And it's good for the students as well as for the faculty and in university. Yeah.
The corpus of knowledge improves because you produce a corpus of knowledge finally. That is true.
Correct.
Yes. Another important line of thinking in the NEP is also about size. The NEP continuously makes a mention of mega universities, merger of small, unique, one-discipline institutions into a comprehensive, multidisciplinary mega universities. They even give numbers, 15,000 to 50,000. Is that the direction to go for India? Should India go there?
Yeah. So, in my opinion, yes. If you see today in any kind of an international ranking, and if you see this top 50 university when you consider it, okay, so the size matters. And why this number is, it is not only the number of an academic program. It is not that we have one engineering college and call them as a university, or even in the engineering today, if it is a more demand only on the computer science and have a few branches of computer science and large number and call them as a university. So this is not the way to grow. And when we see that, when we talk about the universities, the large number of academic streams and faculty where they need to talk to each other. So even if you see, if it is an engineering, I would be very happy. There are some courses on humanities and there are some courses of journalism. There are some courses of other related branches must also be included. So we have the strong feeling when we do this, when we block this or break this wall and make it as an interdisciplinary in the areas of a teaching learning, then I'm not only creating an engineer, I'm creating fine engineer. I'm not only creating a legal or a law student, I'm creating a fine lawyer. So the fineness usually it comes from the interdisciplinary, and it must happen at the undergraduate program. So by considering this, number of students, number of academic programs, and interdisciplinary is the one, it makes that change. And today, if you see main Manipal in Karnataka, why it has reached that level, it is purely because of an multidisciplinary university. I haven't seen any kind of a multidisciplinary as main Manipal has, whether it is in health sciences and engineering. 24 institutions are there in one campus, and it is the only one educational town in true spirit. Okay, but if you go to our own Jaipur campus, so far we haven't introduced the health sciences like medical, dental, nursing, we haven't started. But all others that which we have started, today we have about 52 different academic programs. So whether it is an engineering, whether it is a hotel management, legal education, or journalism, humanities, languages, and all. Moving forward, I think we must also look for the health sciences. So the answer to your question, yes, the size matters. It is not only the number of admissions, it also the number of different academic programs. Then
Point
only,
taken.
then only we have to have the feel of the university. Otherwise, no.
I can't resist this question, so I'll just put it to you. But don't you think there is also space for very small, disciplinary, unique institutions? Say, an National Brain Research Institute, or Chennai Mathematical Institute, or even your own TAPME. TAPME stands out as a small boutique management school, but a fine school at that. So while you have a lot of merit when you say that multidisciplinarity is the way to go, shouldn't these institutions also have a place, or should they also become multidisciplinary willy-nilly? I'm quite curious.
Okay, so in a way, what you said is right. Okay, but moving forward, Maheshji, in my opinion, too much specialization will not work.
Okay.
Okay, and even if they wanted to build the brand on their own program, they need to be collaborated with the others. Let us see if there is a IITs, very strong brand only in engineering. But now if you look into that, they have also started management. We have also started humanities, and they have also started multiple, and some IITs, even health sciences, they are starting.
Yes.
Yeah. So they have started this. So what I mean to say, yes, you can be a very strong competitive person in creating that vertical as a specialization. But the fineness will come definitely on multidisciplinary, the fineness. So either they may have to get the resources from outside to bring that fineness, but having your own research resources under your own university make that it is a very workable. That is the only one difference. But whether you take the resource from outside and how challenged it would be, or create your own resources and deliver it and create other disciplines also, so it will be a win and win for the universities to go ahead.
Interesting. That takes me to the last question of this conversation, sir. I'm overshooting time, but this is an important question. The NEP also has proposed an umbrella HEC, which will subsume most other regulatory bodies, possibly all of them under the Ministry of HRD, and we don't know yet about medical and agriculture because they fall under different statutory laws. So unless there's an amendment to that effect and these ministries are amenable, you will still see these two professions and maybe law outside that, but most others would come under an umbrella HEC. What is your take? What do you think?
No, in a way, it is a very good move. Okay, so otherwise, what happened? This is the difficulty that as an education institution, need to handle about 13 to 14 of the different regulatory bodies. Of course, not here in Manipal. In main Manipal in Karnataka, if you see, that is a 14 to 15 regulatory bodies because large health sciences. Even here, we have AICT, we have a Bar Council of India, we have a Council of Architecture, all these kind of a different. So if they come together, it would be nice. I will give you one very interesting example, which government has done it. Let us say, why NEET? Okay, why NEET, NEET? So parents had that difficulty to go to or students to write for the multiple entrance examination, multiple counseling, and getting into one of the medical colleges. Government understood that, and they said that no, there will not be any multiple entrance examination. There will not be any kind of a multiple the counseling. Of course, multiple rounds will be there, but it is under the same umbrella. Look at the comfort level of that child to write one examination and participating in it, and look at the anxiety level of the parents, so that he will support only for that. Of course, problems are there, but we need to address that. But it has been an applied, and it is a working model. Okay, so similarly, if the government has that kind of an idea to centralize all those things and give kind of a comfort to the students and for the parents, why can't such kind of a comfort, can all this regulatory can come together and give this comfort for an university? Why we have to write for a multiple regulatory bodies, and why there is all those things? Of course, you can have your experts there. Experts we don't have it. Let the expert come from that particular background. But give us that comfort, no? University, give us that kind of a comfort. And I personally feel that it would be a very good move. But how far that we are succeeding in implementation, we have to wait and watch.
Interesting. One corollary to this is also that mostly in any developed country, the profession and education is separated. So I could learn a lot of things, but to practice as a lawyer, I need to write an examination and qualify. So as an aspiring lawyer, I am tested at the end. The institution which offers legal education is not tested by the Bar Council. In other words, education remains the sole preserve of the university. You design, develop, deliver a curriculum which makes a student a lawyer, but unless he clears the Bar Council examination, he cannot practice as a lawyer. Is that probably a way?
So no, in my opinion, the collaboration must happen at the learning level itself. Okay, see, for example, when we see architecture council of architecture, if you see, I have a very high grading for them, because the kind of the training what they do and the kind of the learning which happens, it is a more on experiential. And then there is also a training which happens during the 5 years period. And when at the end of the 5 years, there will not be a separate examination, but they will be applying for the the certificate for the practice. So this must happen. Why only at the exit level? Why we need to apply for it? Maybe the standard of education is different from the standard of the institutions. So that is the reason, maybe for the time being it is true, but moving forward, so whatever we educate or wherever we put the teaching, learning in the education, that must be sufficient for him to practice it. And we have to raise, and every university must also give that commitment. Okay, otherwise what happen? This 4 or 5 years will be a wastage. It is only at the end we are giving a degree, and then he has to train, or somebody has to unlearn, relearn, and be ready for some kind of a practice. It means that it really hurts as an academician. So what we have done in this 4 or 5 years is a wastage of time. So Maheshji, if you ask me, it is the commitment that each university must give it, and give that kind of an experiential learning. And at the end, whoever the university gives the certificate, and that person must be confident enough and a competent enough, okay, to go for a practice. So that is the level that we need to raise, and for which all the support, what are the requirement, the university is doing it, we need to do it. Whether it is a coordination with the industry, whether it's a coordination with the regulatory body, everything that we need to do it. And I'm sure, and I'm very hopeful that under NEP 2020, this would happen. Otherwise, what you said, it will definitely hurt me. And let me one thing, after all I did, and if I certificate as a lawyer, and if he fails in this the examination, what it means?
Correct. It just means what you just now said.
So that is not the situation that we look for it, and that must be the commitment of the universities. Of course, we are very hopeful. Let us say we will move towards it.
Perfect. It's a pleasure talking to you, Professor Prabhu. Thank you so much from our end.
Okay. So thank you very much, Mahesh ji, for this wonderful interaction. And also I am very thankful to EPSI for creating these platforms and interacting with the many of us. Thank you very much. I truly enjoyed.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.